What's up, guys? Let's talk about which mid-range phone should you guys go with in 2022 here. So today we got the Poco X3 Pro, the Galaxy A52 5G, and the iPhone SE. Now what these phones actually have all in similar is that they are actually around the $300 price point. You can get the SE easily $300. I have all the links down below. A52 5G. If you get this phone, again, like refurbished, I got all these phones refurbished except this one. You can get that for $300 around that price. And then the Poco is actually at a crazy price right now. It honestly trends for around $250. It's an extremely good deal. So let's go ahead and just go over what are the pros and cons of each, what makes each better than the others. So let's go ahead and get started here. And actually, let's go ahead and talk about the build quality. So the iPhone SE is a super small phone, and it looks a little bit outdated compared to these phones, as you can see, with the kind of chunky bezels, and it kind of has like the older iPhone 8 design, which honestly doesn't look that bad from the back here. Now the A52 5G, it does have a plastic build, but it still is able to look pretty good in my opinion. Maybe the black color is not like doing it that much justice, but any other color you see, this phone looks pretty good. Now it is a full plastic phone, also has an IP rating as well too. This phone has an IP rating, the iPhone as well. And then the Poco here. The Poco has a just super interesting look. You either really like the look of this phone or you hate it, so it's kind of like one or the other, but it's also a very plastic phone. So the iPhone does kind of have it beat in that sort of like giving it that more, I guess, like premium feel to it, I guess. Now, as you guys can see the sizes of these phones here, you can see how small the SE is. So if you want a really small phone that you can one hand, this is a really great phone. Now, there is something interesting. So the iPhone does not have a headphone jack, and both of these phones, the A52 and the Poco, they do have headphone jacks. So do keep that in mind. All these phones have stereo speakers, which we will go ahead and compare. Alright, so let's talk about unlocking. I'll start with my favorite. My favorite is the Poco. So this phone has a physical fingerprint scanner, but it's in the power button, and I honestly think this is just the most natural way to unlock your phone. It's just really easy. You don't really think about it. The iPhone SE, it does have, oh wow, it does have the physical home button, and Touch ID works flawlessly on this phone, and that's really why a lot of people really like to buy this phone. It's simply because it has Touch ID and a home button. A lot of people do not like the gestures. And then the A52 does a really good job at giving you a more modern take on it. So it does have a in-display fingerprint sensor. And then you can also do face unlock on this phone as well too. So they're all really good. It just comes down to which one you prefer. Like I said, I prefer the Poco. But what I like about Android is that you have two options: face unlock and a fingerprint scanner. With iPhones, they only give you one option. Now let's go ahead and talk about displays. So this is pretty much where the A52 5G shines. It has the best display out of the bunch. It is a Super AMOLED display, and it's got the punch hole, and it's also 120 Hertz. So it is just a way better display than the iPhone or the Poco. So the Poco, it does have a pretty big display as well too, the biggest display here, but it's an IPS panel, so it just doesn't get as bright as this panel. And it also is, both of these are 120 Hertz as well too. So even though they look similar, the A52 is just more color accurate, and it does way better in the sunlight as well too. So definitely take that into consideration. If you watch a lot of content on your phone, the A52 5G is the best display here. Now the iPhone, again, it's a pretty good display. Honestly, the iPhone's display, this IPS panel is better than this IPS panel. This one gets brighter, and it also, the colors just look a little bit better to me. But the only thing, a downside about this phone is you kind of have these chunky bezels. But one of the positives is that this phone definitely is very easy to reach. So if you're somebody who kind of struggles, or you kind of hate smaller phones, this phone is just easy to reach everything. Honestly, you don't have to kind of shimmy it a lot. You can just sort of get to everything really quickly. So that is one thing I like. But as far as display quality, the A52 5G is definitely the best here. Alright guys, let's talk about the CPUs for a second here. So we do have 6 gigs 6 gigs and then 3 gigs of RAM. But when it comes to the chipset, the iPhone SE, it pretty much still has a flagship chipset in here, which is absolutely nuts. As you can see with the Geekbench scores here, it pretty much blows the Poco and the A52 5G out of the water. The Poco would have the next best processor, and the A52 5G with the weakest processor here. And it really doesn't show that much when you're navigating and stuff like that, because they all feel the same. Like if you start launching apps, they'll pretty much be on par here. So let's go ahead and just try it. Open YouTube. You can see the SE, Poco, and then A52 is, you know, slightly behind. And then look at the scrolling difference here. You see the iPhone, it feels kind of slow compared to the 120 hertz scrolling. The 60 hertz is still smooth, but you know, you will feel that difference there. Try another one here. Open Subway Surf. Again, the iPhone blazing fast, Poco. So you can see, really not that big of a difference here. They all remain very fast and fluid. Now, the difference is going to be when we get into PUBG, you'll see the difference in graphic performance here. All right, so this is what I was talking about with gaming performance. So the iPhone, it really does play games the smoothest and the best in my opinion because of such a strong chipset. So if we go to graphics, you can see we're at HDR. We can even go up to HDR Extreme, and then we can go to Ultra HD. So as you can see, it's just very smooth. Now, the big difference here with the A52 5G, this is where if you're a gamer, you're going with the iPhone or the Poco. So you can see I'm not even able to do Extreme as smooth. You know, I'm just not able to play at these super high settings. Now, for a casual gamer, this is fine, because it still plays smooth. You can still play pretty much, you know, most games very smoothly, but you're not going to be playing at the fastest and smoothest settings here. And also with the Poco, it just does also a fantastic job with gaming HDR Extreme as well. So very, very fast for the Poco and iPhone. So if you are a gamer, you're definitely, in my opinion, I would go with the Poco because battery life is so much better. So if you're playing games, you don't have to run to the charger. Because if you're on the SE, you're going to kind of have to run to the charger. So I would say, if you're a gamer, I would really focus in on the Poco, honestly. Alright, so we got these speakers up to max volume on all of these phones. Let's go ahead and hear which phone has the best speakers, starting with the SE. Alright, so you know, pretty much like I thought. So the Poco X3 Pro does have the best speaker. It's the loudest, more punchier speaker. Then it would be the A52 5G. It's really not too far behind it. It's just not as punchy. And then the SE, of course, just being the smaller phone, I didn't expect it to outdo these two bigger phones here, but it still has pretty good speakers. So the top speakers on these phones do sound pretty good. I'm getting no distortion really on these devices here. So lastly, let's go ahead and discuss battery life, because this is a a pretty big one here. So the iPhone SE, while it does do, it's okay for, I guess, a really light user. If you play a lot of games and stuff, you're definitely gonna have to charge this phone because it's just a small phone. That's the thing about any small phone. It's just gonna struggle unless it's like a 13 mini or something, like a newer, smaller iPhone. This phone does like 4 hours and 30 minutes. It's nothing too crazy. It should be enough for somebody that's really light on their phone, doesn't play a ton of games. Now, the A52 5G and the Poco, they do phenomenal jobs with battery life. These phones easily can go a full day, no problem. So whether you're gaming or whatever, they're just going to do an excellent job there. So they're pretty much on par. You can easily get 6 hours of screen on time out of these phones. So that's pretty much it, guys. Honestly, if I was to pick out of the bunch, I feel like the A52 5G is just the more balanced device here. I really do think, because the cameras are solid, the screen is the best. Only downside with this phone is the chip is kind of weak compared to these two phones, so you just can't game on this phone at like high settings like you can with these two phones. But if that doesn't bother you, I mean, honestly, I think it's the best buy. But yeah, so the SE, Poco, great phones as well too. So you just kind of have to choose based on the pros and the cons here. So be sure to let me know, what do you guys think? Which phone would you guys buy? And I will catch you guys in the next